Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Bob Dalton had ambitions.
Oh.
He claimed, beat anything Jesse James ever did. Rob two banks at once in broad daylight.
no shit.
October 5th, 1892, the Dalton Gang attempted this feat when they set out to rob the C.M. Condon and Company's Bank and the First National Bank on opposite sides of the street in Coffeyville, Kansas. Why are there two banks right across the street from each other? But I guess Bob had planned the entire robbery. Emmett, however, was against the idea. He had gone to school at Robbins Corners near Coffeyville and knew several hundred people in town. Several hundred people?
Right.
He was afraid some of his friends would be hurt, but Bob assured him there would not be any shooting, and then it would all be over before anyone knew what happened. Well.
Well, you were wrong.
You were wrong. Francis wrong, Bob.
Well, the plan was that Bob and Emmett were to rob the First National Bank while Grat, Broadwell, and Powers robbed the Condon Bank across the street. Emmett thought Grat would mess things up if he went alone with Powers and Broadwell and thought they should trade places. This led to a heavy argument between Bob and Emmett and created bitterness between them on the way to the robbery.
Well, it's already going wrong.
Right, they were pissed.
Well, Bob had planned for the gang to tie their horses to a post behind the Condon Bank where it was protected from the center of town by brick walls. They had not been to the town for several years, though, and the hitching post had since been removed during the street work.
Mm-hmm.
Bob would not allow Emmett to check out the town beforehand and feared that he would be recognized, so this was not factored into their plan.
Okay.
When they arrived, Bob had to think quickly. That's what I like about you, Bob. And decided instead to tie their horses in an alley across from the bank to the west near the city jail, which offered them little protection.
Right. That's pretty stupid. Wow. This is now known as Dalton Alley. Yeah. Morning of October 5th, gang emerged from the alley onto the plaza of Coffeyville. Storekeeper, who was sweeping the sidewalk a few feet away, noticed Bob, Emmett, and even Grat, who were wearing a fake mustache, and ran inside the store. In close order, the five crossed Walnut Street from the alley to the Condon Bank, holding Winchester rifles close along their legs. Grat, Broadwell, and Powers entered the Condon Bank. Emmett and Bob hurried across Union Street to the First National Bank. Oh, man. Here we go.
Street work was being done at the time, and one of the workers noticed the men dog-trotting across the alley with rifles and began to yell, "The Daltons are robbing the bank!" They already know who they are. Very soon, half the businessmen around the plaza knew what was going on, and the message quickly passed throughout town.
Holy shit.
Grat entered the Condon Bank and pointed his Winchester at the cashier, ordering his hands up, while Powers and Broadwell took positions at the door. Grat went to the back office, ordered the manager into the front, and then he handed the cashier a sack bag and ordered him to fill it with cash from the money drawer.
Ooh. Then, noticing the vault door was open, Grat ordered both of them into the vault, where the safe with all the gold. That's where that was. And when told to open the safe, the manager lied, telling Grat it was a time lock and that it would not open for another 10 minutes. Grat believed him and decided we were going to wait. He then ordered the bags of silver on the vault floor into his bag, containing $1,000 and weighing about 200 pounds. Yeah, that's way too much weight.
Well, meanwhile, Emmett and Bob had entered the First National Bank, covered the officers and two customers, and ordered the cashier, Thomas Aries, to open the safe in gold and cash, with gold and cash. Put the gold in the sack, forced Aries in front of them as cover, and went out the front door. They had planned to meet with Grat and cross the plaza to the alley where they could make their escape, but word of the robbery had spread through town. As they exited, an American Express agent opened fire with his revolver, and Bob and Emmett returned fire and left Aries on the sidewalk.
Oh, shit.
Did they hit him?
Wow, they turned around and went through the back door, carrying both rifles and sack bags, while taking two other bank employees as cover. Grat heard all these shootings from the Express agent. He then decided the sack bag was way too heavy to carry and ordered the silver taken out, then stashed what cash he could fit in his coat pockets. Two hardware stores in the town had meanwhile begun passing out guns to the local civilians, who began firing through the windows at Condon Bank. The three returned fire and held out, waiting for the time lock to open. Right. Several civilians were wounded in this very fighting.
I bet. Well, when Emmett and Bob went to the back door of the First National Bank, they were met by Lucius Baldwin, who had been watching the door with his pistol. Bob ordered him to drop the gun, and when he failed to answer, shot him with the Winchester, killing him.
Oh, man.
Bob and Emmett made their way to the end of the back alley into 8th Street, where they could hear the townspeople shooting at the Condon Bank. Outside of a drugstore across from the First National, George Cubine was standing with his Winchester aimed at the front door of the bank, awaiting the exit of Bob and Emmett. Bob shot him in the head, killing him.
Damn.
Cubine's partner, Charles Brown, was standing unarmed next to him and went to pick up his Winchester. As he lifted the rifle up, Bob shot and killed him as well.
Well, you shouldn't even touch that rifle, buddy.
Run away, buddy.
Wow, after being left on the sidewalk by Bob and Emmett, Thomas Ayers had run into one of the hardware stores and grabbed a rifle. He spotted Bob just as he had killed Brown and aimed his rifle at him from behind the store window. Bob saw Aries from about 200 feet away and quickly shot him in the head. Aries was not murdered, though, but he remained paralyzed for life.
It's a hell of a shot, 200 feet. In the midst of the shooting, Powers told Grat that he'd been hit in the arm. Grat ordered the employees to lay on the floor in the back office, and after receiving the signal from Bob, told Powers and Broadwell that it was time to go.
Let's go.
Three went out the side door, crouching and dashing across Walnut Street to the alley where they had hitched their horses. Bob and Emmett met Grat and the others in the alley, the sacks of money still over their arms.
Damn.
All right, now just get away, buddies.
Whoa, as the Daltons made their way west down the alley towards the horses, Town Marshal Charles T. Connolly came through the library into the alley and then ran east towards the plaza without noticing the bandits behind him. Oh, no. Grat then shot him in the head and murdered him. Following behind Marshal Connolly was John Clore, still in the stable. Grat noticed him, but before he could aim, Clore shot him in the throat.
Oh, there goes Grat.
Damn.
Taking fire from the hardware store, Bob was hit in the head and the heart, killing him instantly.
Holy shit.
Powers tried to mount his horse, but shots from the store also killed him. Emmett was able to mount his horse unwounded to begin riding away, but after noticing Bob was hit, turned around and attempted to lift Bob onto his horse. Emmett was then hit in the back with a load of buckshot.
Oh.
Broadwell was hit several times, but managed to ride away. He was found 2 miles away, dead.
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
Damn. Bill Dalton and Bill Doolin had been waiting several miles away with extra horses to aid the gang's escape. After getting tired of waiting, they left, only to learn later of the fate of their fellow
What a
gang
bunch
members.
of pieces of shit. First of all,
Right.
they're your brothers, Bill.
Right.
Oh, tired of waiting. What if shit went wrong? What a bunch of
I'm
idiots.
pretty sure they heard all the shooting, though.
I think.
Grat and Bob Dalton, Dick Broadwell, Bill Powers, all murdered. Emmett Dalton received 23 gunshot wounds and survived. He was shot through the right arm, below the shoulder, through the left, right, and in some counts, hip and groin, and received 18 to 23 buckshot in his back.
Jeez.
Damn.
He was given a life sentence in the Kansas State Penitentiary in Lansing, Kansas, of which he served 14 years before being pardoned.
Oh, nice.
He moved to Hollywood, California, and became a real estate agent, an author, and an actor, and died in 1937 at age 66.
Oh,
Look at him.
shit.
Bill Doolin, Bitter Creek Newcomb, and Charlie Pierce, none of whom was at Coffeyville, were the only members left of the original Dalton Gang.
Damn.
Years after the robberies and his release from prison, Emmett said that the relentless pressure put on them by Deputy U.S. Marshal Heck Thomas as he hunted them was a key factor in his gang's decision to commit the robberies.
Wow.
They hoped that a big haul from the banks would allow them to leave the territory and escape Thomas's heat. All we need is just one more score.